Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do to prepare traps for the upcoming trapping season. We're going to talk today about new traps and used traps and what we do to get them ready for the fall season. Today's a beautiful summer day. I like to do this, what I consider step one in this process during the summer, because it allows me to take inventory of the things that I have around, and if I'm missing something, I have plenty of time to get it before the fall season starts. Brand new traps from the factory are covered with a light film of oil on them, and the oil prevents the metal from rusting. So when you open up that brand new package of shiny traps, you might find that it leaves a little bit of oil on your fingers. What we want to do in this step is to remove that oil, and the reason that we want to do that is our second step in trap preparation is to do something called dyeing the traps, where we actually will put them in a solution that will make them a darker color. It seems a little bit backwards, but what we want to do is actually get a real light film of rust on our brand new traps, because that rust will allow our dye to soak in and penetrate that trap. The dye that we're going to put on it in step two is actually going to camouflage the trap. It's also going to prevent it from severe rusting, which could happen because these are going to be laying in the wet and the frozen ground, and we want to do what we can to protect our investment, because these traps cost us a lot of money. Brand new traps with that oil on them, some people will put a solution in the water that they're going to boil this trap in. I've heard of people using products, one of them is lye, and what that does is it kind of pits the metal and allows that rust to build up along the trap, just a real fine film, and again allows that dye to soak into that brand new metal. If I were to dip this in dye, this bright shiny trap, that dye would pretty much just run off the surface. It's not going to penetrate. Well, the traps that I'm going to do today are actually seasoned traps. They are used. They've been used for many of seasons. And what I like to do before I just jump into cleaning them up is kind of take an inventory of what they look like, what's on them, what's not on them. And before I just throw them into boiling water to clean them up, I like to just kind of check them over just a little bit. When I do this, I like to lay out my traps, a variety of different types and sizes, and I like to lay them all out and kind of do an inventory, take a good look at them. If they have any grass or mud from last season, we like to get that off of there. I have the garden hose right here, and I spray them down good, clean them up. This particular stake that we use here is called a disposable stake. I really like these, works really well. But in our heavy clay ground, a lot of times when these are used, this end will plug up with clay and become hard as a rock, so I want to make sure at this step before I do anything further today that I clean that out well, and like I say, just kind of give them a good look over. Some things I noticed on some of my traps today. This particular one, the tag to identify my name and DNR number is missing, so I'll have to replace that today. This particular one is missing a swivel, and those are the types of things I like to take care of today. Again, if I don't have the thing that I need to fix it, I got plenty of time to order it and get that ready for fall. So what we're going to do today, once these traps are cleaned up, we're going to put them just in boiling water. This is just a pot of water, nothing else in it, and step 3 in this trap preparation process for certain traps, primarily ones we're going to use for upland trapping, for canines. The third step we're going to use is to do what we call waxing, where we will actually dip these traps in wax, and that wax will lubricate the trap. It will also help with scent proofing. It will also prevent further rusting from happening to these traps. So these traps that are seasoned have wax on them from last year. And one thing that this boiling will do to that today is lift that wax from this trap, and it'll actually come up to the surface of our water and float on top. So basically we're cleaning this, getting it down to bare metal so that we can go through the dyeing process and the waxing process all over again. These particular traps here, I've already checked out. They're good to go. They've got their swivels, they've got their identification tags, they've all got the stakes on them. At this step, if I have all of the things that I need, I like to have the stakes already on them so that these are just cleaned up and ready to go. And when the day comes that I want to put them in the dye solution, it's a little bit quicker. So today's kind of our maintenance day, our day that we just lay everything out, give it a good look over, and make sure that they're ready to go. So this water is boiling here. Another thing that I really like about these stakes is that they work as a handle. So we'll just group these together. Like so. Safety glasses are something that I always recommend when doing this, especially later on when we get into the dyeing process, but it's always a good idea. So we're just going to open up our pot of water. Carefully lower those traps in. And a lot of times I'll just let these stakes sit out the side, like so. Another thing that I sometimes do is I might take a piece of wire, wire those all together, and then sometimes I'll just drop the whole piece in there. And I'll use my pliers or an extra chunk of wire, make sure that they're laying down in that water well. We're just going to cover them up. We're going to let them simmer a while, and again, any debris left on there, any soil from last year, any wax from last year, eventually is going to boil to the top of that pan. What we're going to do then when these have boiled for a good while here is I will very carefully take this pan off. I'll set it on the ground. Remember, you're dealing with boiling water here. And I'm going to take water and I'm going to add it to the top of this pan very, very slowly, very, very carefully. And what that'll do is any floating debris on the top of my water, especially that wax is going to float in there. When I put that water in, that wax is going to be lifted up and it'll go out and over the top of my pan. Now it's important not to do that when it's on the heat source because wax can be very, very flammable. I'll do that over on the ground, and then the reason that I do that is when I pick these traps back up, if that floating wax is on there, basically I'm just recontaminating those traps. So I want to get that wax and that debris out of there so that I can pick up those traps through clean water. A couple things that we like to have around in this process of stage 1 and trap preparation. Again, nice to have a few extra stakes around if you're going to use those disposable stakes. Like to have everything together as we go through this process. Extra wire, always handy. Trap tags to identify your name and your number, so that again, stage 2 in the trap preparation process just goes a little bit quicker. Another thing that I really like to have around, and something that I like to have on my trap supply order, are these quick links. All this is a chain link with a threaded nut on it, and I use these to connect my traps to the disposable stakes. There are a few different ways of doing it. This particular way works really well for me. I find that I save a lot of money ordering these through the trapping supply companies versus the local hardware store. So it's nice to have those around, and I try to keep an inventory on hand here at home. If we're doing brand new traps like we started the video with, it's important to do this process early in the year. Again, that will allow a light film of rust to build up on your traps before you go through the dyeing process. I would take that brand new trap, I would wire it up so that they stayed together, and I'd lay it out in the weeds, in the wet grass, in the dewy summer grass in the morning, and that'll allow that rust to build up so that when we do the trapping or the dyeing process, that again, that dye can penetrate down to the steel. So I hope that you've learned some things today. Thanks for watching.